I keep telling myself that over and over. This is a record, a way to document what happened before someone else finds it and thinks they're going mad too. If you're reading this, you're already closer than you should be. You've already stepped into something you can't walk out of. Because it doesn't stop at the walls. It doesn't stay where it's supposed to. I moved into the house on Kettering Lane 3 months ago. It wasn't a conscious decision, really. I've been looking for something cheap, something isolated. A place with history, maybe some character, something quiet, something broken. The listing said, quaint countryside home, structurally sound, some repairs needed, recently uninhabited, motivated seller. Uninhabited was a polite way of saying abandoned. The seller was the granddaughter of the last known owner, a man named Thomas Weaver who hadn't been seen in over a decade. No death certificate, no body, just gone. The county had legally declared him deceased 2 years prior, and the house had passed to her. When I arrived, the first thing I noticed was the silence. No birds, no insects, not even the wind. Just this hanging stillness, as though the trees were waiting for something to exhale first. The wallpaper caught my attention almost immediately. It covered nearly every wall in the house. Not old floral designs or delicate patterns like you'd expect in a country home, but something stranger. It was off-white, the color of dried bone, with fine ridges that didn't quite repeat in any predictable pattern. Not symmetrical. Organic almost. Like the inside of something, not the outside. In the upstairs bedroom, I noticed the paper didn't quite reach the floor. There was a 3-inch gap between the edge of the wallpaper and the molding, almost like it had shrunk back from the baseboard. The drywall beneath was raw and cracked, and there was a faint discoloration that looked like bruised skin. That night, I dreamed of a room made entirely of breathing walls. The first real sign that something was wrong came about a week in. I was scrubbing the hallway baseboards with bleach and a sponge when I caught a smell. Something wet, something warm, like rotting fruit left in a sealed jar. It wasn't constant. It pulsed like it had a rhythm. It came from behind the wallpaper. When I pressed my nose against it, yes, I actually did, I could swear the scent became stronger the longer I inhaled. Like the paper was releasing it to me. That night, I tore off a section in the hallway. And underneath, it wasn't drywall. It was flesh. I don't mean flesh-colored. I mean flesh. There was texture, an uneven surface that felt like scarred tissue, warm to the touch. When I pressed on it gently, the surface gave slightly and then sprang back like skin over cartilage. I stared at it for 10 minutes. Then I did something I can't explain. I leaned in and listened. And I swear to God, I heard a heartbeat. A slow, patient one. In the following days, things escalated. Rooms I hadn't entered yet began to stink faintly. Wallpaper I hadn't touched began to peel at the edges. In the guest room, I found a bulge forming beneath the surface like a blister, pulsing. I documented everything, took photos. But in every picture I took, the wall looked completely normal. No bulges, no discoloration, no openings, just off-white wallpaper. That's when I realized it only showed itself when it wanted to. The house was watching me. The first time I heard the voice, I was in the basement, clearing away old shelving units and rusted tools. The walls down there were covered in the same wallpaper, though far more degraded, hanging in strips, stained with mildew. As I pulled one section free, I saw something beneath it. Not tissue this time. It looked like an eye. Not human. Deep black-pitted. Like the eye of a fish pulled from the deepest parts of the ocean. It blinked. I stepped back, nearly fell. That's when I heard it. "Don't peel me yet." The voice was whisper soft, and yet it vibrated inside my head like it had come from behind my own ears. I've since pulled all the records I can find about the house. Thomas Weaver, the prior owner, filed complaints with the county decades ago. Strange noises, movement in the walls, water leaks that couldn't be traced. Eventually, he stopped calling. His neighbors claimed he went inside and never came back out. His last known letter to his niece read, "Don't come looking for me. The house is hollow. It's growing. It's hungry." 2 nights ago, I awoke to the sound of wet footsteps above me. I was in the main bedroom, and the ceiling was directly overhead. The footsteps were slow and deliberate, pacing back and forth above my bed. There's no attic, only the roof. When I looked up, I saw it. The ceiling was expanding and contracting like a lung. I ran into the hall, and for the first time, I saw the walls move. Not just breathing, turning, facing me. I've dug into the living room wall. Beneath the paper, beneath the tissue, there's a cavity, a hollow space between the studs that should not be there. It stretches far deeper than the house allows, like the inside is curled inward, like the house is growing organs. I don't know what's inside yet, but I will find out. I've brought a flashlight, gloves, and tools. If I'm not back by morning, you'll know I found something. Or it found me. Not because I wanted to. Not because I was curious. I went in because I knew that if I waited any longer, the house would seal it again. It was offering me something, inviting me. And I couldn't say no, because I knew, deep down, this wasn't about finding answers. This was about witnessing something I wasn't supposed to see. The hole in the wall, no wider than a dog's crawl space, yawned open like a wound behind the peeled-back wallpaper. I shined my flashlight into it. The beam didn't catch a back wall. The drywall gave way to something else. Not insulation, not studs, membrane. It glistened like the inside of a throat, fibrous and slick, with little twitching threads that pulled back when the light hit them. I should have stopped, but I didn't. I dropped to my knees and crawled inside. The space behind the wall wasn't man-made. The tunnel sloped downward, narrow and uneven. It pulsed gently around me, the walls quivering with each breath I took. It breathed with me, matching my inhale and exhale. It wasn't drywall at all. It was living. The further I went, the more it narrowed. My shoulders scraped against the sides, and the walls left streaks of reddish fluid on my clothes. The smell was stronger here, sour, sweet, and meaty. The air was wet. I looked back. The entry had sealed shut behind me. I don't know how long I crawled. Time folded in on itself. At some point, my flashlight caught a shape ahead, thicker than the rest of the tunnel. It looked like a pipe at first, but as I got closer, I saw that it wasn't metal or plastic. It was a vein, thick, purple, pulsing. It ran along the ceiling, splitting into smaller branches that spiderwebbed across the chamber like a vascular map. One of them twitched when my headlamp shone on it. I touched it. It was warm, and it twitched back. Eventually, the tunnel opened into a room, an impossible space within the walls of the house. I should have been beneath the living room floor, but it extended far wider and deeper than the house allowed. The chamber was shaped like a heart, domed and bulbous. The walls were slick and veined. Patches of the inner surface had clusters of fleshy nodules, like nipples or eyes. I couldn't tell which. At the center of the room was a kind of pedestal a mass of knotted tissue that pulsed steadily. And resting atop, it was something metal. A bell. It wasn't just sitting there. It was embedded in the flesh, like the house had grown around it. The bell was tarnished and old, antique bronze, etched with a faint pattern of interlocking spirals. There was no rope or clapper. When I got close, I realized the patterns weren't spirals at all. They were mouths. Dozens of tiny, open mouths pressed into metal, each with microscopic teeth. When I reached out to touch it, I felt heat radiating off the bell. And then I heard it. "You shouldn't be here." Not whispered, not spoken aloud. It arrived inside my head. I turned around. Nothing. No one. But the voice persisted. "You weren't invited." The chamber quivered. I could feel a shift in pressure, like the walls were clenching. I backed away, and the floor beneath me pulsed, expelling a rush of warm air that smelled like afterbirth. I gagged. It's too late now. A slit opened in the far wall, wet and gaping like a mouth yawning. And from it, something crawled out. It was the size of a child, but wrong in every way. Its limbs were too long, its hands ending in moist, flat palms, not fingers. It had no face, no eyes, no mouth, just skin stretched tight over a featureless skull. And it were clothing, tattered remnants of a flannel shirt, jeans, clothes from the previous owner. It stumbled forward, gurgling wetly. The skin over its face bulged like something was moving behind it, trying to get out. Then it collapsed, burst like a blister. From inside came hundreds of small, white-legged things, centipede-like. They scattered across the floor, rushing toward me. I ran, back through the tunnel, through the writhing flesh and narrowing, vein-riddled walls. The creatures followed, clicking and skittering, brushing against my arms and legs. When I finally broke through a seam in the wallpaper back into the living room, the air in the house had changed. It was thicker now. Veta. The wallpaper had spread across the ceiling. The doors were gone, sealed over by tissue. The house was closing up. I don't know how long I blacked out. I woke up in my bed, covered in sweat and blood that wasn't mine. The hole in the wall was gone. But the bell, it was now sitting on my nightstand. No mouths, no eyes, just silent, waiting. And the whisper was back. "It's growing now. In you." My skin has started to change. First it was a rash, then a patch of discolored texture on my ribs. It feels warm to the touch, like it's pulsing in sync with my heartbeat. I peeled back a layer this morning. Beneath it wasn't muscle. It was wallpaper. Off-white. Ridged. The house isn't just alive. It's reproducing. And I'm in the next room. The first time I felt it move beneath my skin, I was in the shower. I'd scrubbed the discolored patch on my ribs raw, trying to make it vanish. I even used a wire brush, desperate, panicking. But when I pressed down hard enough, something beneath the skin shifted. It wasn't just a rash. It was rooted in me. I stumbled backward, my vision swimming, and that's when I noticed something on the wall. The wallpaper, the same off-white pattern I'd seen behind the wall. It was growing across the bathroom tiles. The dream started getting worse. Not nightmares, invasions. I'd wake up convinced someone was standing beside my bed, breathing softly, close enough to feel the heat of their breath. But when I looked, no one, until one night I saw it, a dark shape at the foot of my bed. Not standing, hanging. It was suspended from the ceiling by fibrous tendrils, swaying gently. No eyes, no mouth, just a body wrapped in the same pale wallpaper that covered my walls. And in the silence, I heard it whisper, "Don't resist. You're being made beautiful." Every room in the house now has an eye. Not a literal one, at least not at first. But wherever the wallpaper has spread, it bulges in small patches, like tumors beneath the surface. They track movement. Sometimes they open briefly, revealing tiny holes like nostrils, or maybe mouths. I caught one in the hallway, pulsing in rhythm with my heartbeat. When I jabbed it with a screwdriver, it bled. It felt like I was hurting myself. I tried to tell someone. I called my friend Chris, told him to come see the house. He did, but when he arrived, the house was clean. The walls were painted over. Smooth. No eyes. No veins. It looked normal. He left an hour later, convinced I was having a breakdown. He offered me help. Therapy. Sleep. Pills. But after he left, I found something tucked into my mailbox. A scrap of wallpaper, with a single phrase written on the back. "He belongs to us now." I cut deeper last night. Not out of desperation. Out of need. The itch had turned into a pulsing. My whole side throbbed with heat. When I sliced into the skin, it didn't bleed, not like it should have. The tissue underneath was fibrous, patterned like wallpaper. I reached in, pulled out a strand. Thin, white, still twitching. The strand curled in my palm, moved on its own. I flushed it. The toilet groaned, gurgled, and when I lifted the seat, I saw it again, wallpaper growing under the bowl. I started peeling back sections of wallpaper all over the house. Each layer was thicker than the last, more organic. Some parts had little hairs. Others had what looked like pores. But beneath the fifth layer in the hallway, I found something else. A face. Not a drawing. Not a hallucination. A real, human face stretched across the frame like leather. The eyes were closed. The lips were stitched. Someone was inside the wall. I stepped back, and the lips began to move, murmuring the same phrase over and over. "Let the house finish you." I made the mistake of going into the basement again. The furnace was no longer humming. Now it breathed. The pipes along the walls had split, exposing pulsing tissue. Veins. Some of them wrapped around the water heater like umbilical cords. The light flickered, and then I saw it. The center of the infestation. A swollen mass fused to the back wall. At first I thought it was just growth, but then it shifted and opened, revealing a doorway. A hallway of flesh leading further down. It wasn't part of the house's blueprint. It was new. My skin sheds every few hours now. Underneath is something not entirely human. Paler, seamless. When I look at my reflection, I don't recognize my eyes. They're too large, too wide, and behind them, something else is watching. When I sleep, I hear the others, voices deep in the walls, whispering in a tongue I almost understand. One word keeps repeating, convergence. I think I know what it means now. The house isn't possessed. It's reproducing, and I'm not its victim. I'm its womb. I don't remember falling asleep. The last thing I recall was staring at the wall above my bed, watching it breathe, slow, deliberate, like the lungs of something ancient and alive. When I woke up, the sheets were damp with sweat. My arms itched so badly I'd scratched raw grooves into them overnight. But the real terror began when I pulled back the sleeve of my shirt and noticed something pushing through my skin. It wasn't a rash. It was a pattern. Delicate, looping flourishes. Ivory-colored ridges just beneath the surface, growing outward like the beginnings of a floral design. The exact pattern from the wallpaper in the upstairs hallway. I spent an hour in front of the mirror, inspecting every inch of my body. The pattern had begun to appear on my ribs, my thighs, even the soles of my feet. Where I tried to scrub it away, it flaked like dried glue. I could feel it binding me to something larger, something I couldn't see in full, but could sense like a looming weight overhead. That night, I dragged a utility knife into the bathroom with me. I was going to cut it out. Whatever it was. I sliced into the first ridge of the pattern, just above my knee, and a thin spray of clear fluid burst out, not blood. It smelled sweet, cloying like rotting flowers. As I pressed deeper, something shifted beneath the surface, twitching. I dropped the blade in the sink and vomited into the tub. I couldn't finish it. I couldn't keep cutting. Not because of the pain, because I could feel it moving away from the knife. It was avoiding the blade. Whatever it was inside me. It was aware. The air in the house changed after that. Every breath felt thicker, harder to draw in. The smell of old paper and dried glue permeated everything. No matter how many windows I opened, the stench returned, more potent each day. It followed me into the basement, where I found more signs of the infection. The back wall, where I'd first noticed the soft bulge in the concrete months ago, was no longer concrete at all. I pressed a hand to it, and my palm sank slightly into a warm, spongy surface. When I yanked it back, strands of fibrous matter clung to my skin, writhing like tiny worms before curling inward and dissolving. I ran back upstairs and locked the basement door. That night, I woke to the sound of humming. Not a song, no melody, just a low, droning tone that vibrated the floorboards. I followed the sound to the kitchen, where I found the wallpaper peeling on its own, unfurling in long, elegant curls. Behind it, the wall pulsed slowly with the rhythm of a heartbeat. There was something buried there. I could see the outline of a shape, something curled in on itself, fetal, breathing softly. I ran, but I didn't leave the house. I tried. God knows I tried. But each time I reached the front door, my hands shook too badly to grip the knob. The air pressed in on me, thick with invisible pressure, like the house itself was tightening its hold. I grabbed my phone and called Chris again, my voice breaking as I begged him to come back. He agreed, reluctantly, said he'd be by in the morning. I never saw him again. Instead, I found his car parked at the edge of my driveway around noon, the door still open. A single shoe on the gravel. The rest of him was gone. But that night I heard him, whispers through the vents, calling me by name in his voice, begging. I tore the vent cover off and shoved my head inside. The voice stopped, but in the dark duct I saw movement. Not a person. Flesh, growing outward from the inside of the ventilation system, threaded with veins and fine strands like roots. And woven into it, just for a second, I swear I saw it, Chris's face, stretched thin and partially absorbed. His eyes blinked at me. Then the flesh pulled back, melting into the shadows. I didn't eat after that. Couldn't. Every surface in the kitchen was coated with a thin, sticky residue that smelled of varnish and bile. The fridge hummed like it was breathing. I hadn't realized how quiet it was outside until I opened the window and found the entire neighborhood covered in fog. Not the natural kind. It was heavy, yellowish. It smelled like old paint and formaldehyde. I realized, with growing horror, that I hadn't seen anyone outside in days. The mail had stopped coming. No traffic, no footsteps, just fog and the soft rustle of something dragging along the eaves of the house at night. The transformation accelerated. The stairs turned soft. My feet sank slightly as I climbed them, the carpet now a matted tangle of something organic. One night, I dropped a spoon on the living room floor, and it didn't bounce. It sank, silently swallowed by the floorboards. I heard it clinking in the walls a day later. I tore the wallpaper off the upstairs hallway and discovered something else, names, hundreds of them, scratched into the layer beneath. Dozens repeated, some crossed out. My name was among them. Twice. And beside the second was a fresh line, newly etched, still wet. It read, accepted. The final incident before I stopped leaving my room happened 3 nights ago. I woke up to someone or something sitting on the edge of my bed. I didn't move, didn't breathe. I felt the mattress shift under their weight. I heard them breathing. Then they leaned close and in my own voice whispered, "You're doing so well. We're almost ready." I turned my head slowly. There was no one there, but the sheets were warm, indented. The pillow beside me bore the faint imprint of a face. I don't think I'll last much longer. The house no longer watches. It absorbs, and I can feel the final layer pulling tight over me, threading into my skin. When I touch my arms now, they don't feel like mine. They feel like wallpaper, textured, breathable, ready to be hung. I had made the mistake of believing that my transformation was happening to me. It wasn't. It was happening through me. The house was only a vessel. I was the wick in a living candle, being slowly burned away to reveal the thing inside. By the 5th night, without food or sleep, my vision had turned to static in the corners. Every sound was muffled, as if coming from beneath thick water. My skin was no longer dry, but tacky, like freshly glued wallpaper. When I touched my arms, they felt artificial, almost padded, the ridges of the floral pattern now fully grown and shifting in slow spirals across my body. I stopped recognizing my hands. They weren't just marked anymore. They were changing, softening. The flesh became more pliable, less structured, like clay beginning to melt under a heat lamp. My fingertips fused slightly overnight, the bones beneath no longer behaving like bones. I could feel something knitting me into the house, something that wanted to preserve me, but not as myself. It wanted to preserve the shape of me, like a cutout, a stencil. One afternoon, I blacked out on the stairs and woke up in a room that shouldn't exist. It was behind a far wall of the upstairs hall, where the wallpaper had first begun to breathe. The entrance had always been a flat stretch of plaster, but now there was a seam, a vertical slit the height of a door. I don't remember opening it. I don't remember crawling through, but I woke up inside it. The room was narrow, only 4 feet wide. No windows. The walls weren't made of wood or plaster or insulation. They were skin, undulating, veined, and warm to the touch, pulsing slightly with a heartbeat that didn't match my own. The walls were bleeding, not violently, just weeping a thick, syrupy liquid that ran in slow streaks across their surfaces. The scent was overwhelming, like formaldehyde and mildew. There was something else in the smell, too, something sugary like overripe fruit that's just started to rot. I sat up but couldn't stand. The ceiling was too low. Everything inside was damp and spongy. And then I heard it, breathing, not from me, not from outside, but from within the wall itself. It was shallow at first, labored, as if something enormous was trying to be born, but couldn't yet push free. I pressed my ear to the soft surface and heard movement inside, like something pacing but with too many legs. I should have panicked. I should have screamed, but I didn't, because I knew what was coming. The same way a child might not understand thunder, but instinctively knows to be afraid of lightning. When I crawled back out of the room, the slit behind me closed. Seamlessly. Perfectly. The wall smoothed over like a healing wound, leaving no trace it had ever opened. After that, I stopped trying to fight it. Not out of surrender, but because it no longer mattered. Something in the house had noticed me, and it was preparing to use me. The air shifted again that night. Thicker, more humid. The scent of wallpaper glue was gone now, replaced with something rank and biological. The kind of smell that only comes when a body is breaking down or being rebuilt. The whispers returned in full. But this time they weren't just voices through vents or walls. They came from under the floorboards, from inside the drains, from the paint on the ceiling, which had begun to bulge in rhythmic pulses like it was about to split open. Stay inside, they whispered. Let it finish you. I spent my last few coherent hours in the basement. Something had changed there, too. The old concrete floor was now spongy. When I walked across it, I could feel it give beneath my weight, like stepping on a carpet soaked through with fluid. The far wall, the one I once thought was damp, had peeled away entirely, revealing a tunnel I had never seen before. It led downward at a steep angle, slick with clear mucus and lined with ridges that pulsed like the inside of a throat. I followed it. I don't know why. Curiosity? Compulsion? Some part of me wanted to see it. The tunnel went on for what felt like hours. No light, except the faint red glow coming from the tissue itself. The deeper I crawled, the louder the whispers grew, less like voices and more like a collective murmur. Language stripped of form. Communal thought vibrating inside my skull. I understood none of it, but it recognized me. At the bottom was a chamber, round and massive, the walls beating slowly with a rhythm like a living drum. I stood in the center, knee-deep in something that resembled amniotic fluid, and watched as the walls around me began to open. And from them, it emerged. It had no eyes. No face, but it wore dozens of impressions, flesh masks that shifted across its front like images projected on skin. I saw my face among them. Chris's, even my mother's, though she died years ago. And then it did something I will never forget. It sang, a low, guttural tone that vibrated my organs and made my teeth ache. A song without words. But it was beautiful, awful, grief-soaked. It felt like every memory I had ever buried was being plucked out of me and digested by that sound. The walls opened again, and this time I saw them. Others, dozens. People whose skin had fused with the wall, half absorbed into the structure, their mouths still twitching with unfinished prayers. Some had no faces. Some were only torsos melded into the organic architecture. And then I understood what the house was. It wasn't a house. It was an organism. A massive, ancient thing that had once been alive in the earth, buried for centuries until someone built over it. Maybe a cabin. Maybe an old mill. Whatever it was, it didn't matter. Every structure that stood atop this spot became part of it, and it remembered them. It grew them, through the wallpaper, through the walls, through me. The final horror came as I tried to crawl back up the tunnel, sobbing, my hands slick with fluid, my lungs burning. Because as I reached the top, there was no exit. Only wall, only wallpaper, floral patterned, warm to the touch. I screamed. I clawed. I slammed my fists into the wall until the bones in my hand cracked. But there was no way back. And then I turned, and it was standing behind me again. The flesh thing. The collector. But now it was wearing only my face. Smiling. It raised a finger and pointed to the wall. There, etched into the pulsing surface in wet red lines, were the words, "You were always meant to stay." I don't know how much time has passed. I think I'm still in the wall. I can feel others around me now, just beyond the wallpaper. Some of them scream. Most don't. I try not to think. I try not to feel. Because when I do, the house feeds. If someone finds this, if this message somehow escapes, don't come here. Don't try to help me. Burn the house. Burn everything. Because once the wallpaper breathes, it's already too late. You're part of it now. This is the final entry I will ever write. Or maybe it's already been written. Maybe I've just been allowed to remember it now. It's impossible to describe the moment I stopped being me. Not because it was painful, though it was, but because it happened the way rot sets into wood. Quiet. Gradual. You don't notice the change until you feel yourself give way under pressure, and by then, it's already inside the grain, a softness that wasn't there before. A hollowness becoming permanent. I didn't die. At least I don't think I did. I migrated. I became part of the house. But it took time. And it took others. I wasn't alone anymore. There were others in the walls. I could feel them moving, especially at night, when the house breathed deepest. The one closest to me, I named him the man in the ceiling. He crawled above my bed every night. Sometimes I'd hear his fingernails, long, dry, like dead branches, scraping the inner beams as he shifted positions. He never spoke, just waited, until one night, his face emerged through the plaster, slow and deliberate, not like something breaking through, but something sliding from behind. His mouth didn't open, but I heard him speak in my head. "It's our turn now." And then he disappeared, but I could still feel him. Inside my skull, a weight pressing from behind my eyes, like I was being stared at from the inside out. I woke up in someone else's skin. I don't mean that metaphorically. I mean the flesh on my hands had changed tone. The scars on my arms were gone, replaced with freckled forearms I didn't recognize. My reflection, when the bathroom mirror briefly stopped warping, showed a middle-aged woman, maybe early 60s, with sunken cheeks and stringy blonde hair. She didn't blink, but I felt her. Inside me. It was her turn, just like the man in the ceiling. The house was rotating us, cycling through memories, appearances, voices, identities. All swallowed, all layered, like skin on skin. I was becoming a composite. I found a room again, the one behind the wall upstairs. But this time it opened on its own, not with a seam, but like a mouth. Inside, the walls were lined with teeth. Real ones. Yellow. Misaligned. And between them, the wet flesh that pulsed with every breath. In the center was a chair, grown, not built from spinal columns and vertebrae. I sat down without thinking. It fed me memories. Not mine. Children hiding under stairs. A woman drowning in the upstairs tub. A man hanging himself with phone wire, his neck fusing into the wall before the rope even snapped. They were lived moments, but not by me. The house was making me remember its past, as if it needed a witness, as if it needed a mind. I stopped eating, stopped moving. It didn't matter anymore. The house had me. I couldn't tell where it ended, and I began. My skin no longer felt like skin. The wallpaper inside my arms had taken root. My veins were floral. My eyes itched with something growing behind them. I saw the house's heart that morning. It was under the foundation, deeper than any crawl space or cellar. A wet, living mass, beating slow, like the pulse of a dying god. Around it, bodies were suspended. Hundreds. People who had entered this place. People like me. Their skin had been peeled away and applied across the walls above. Their memories harvested. Their names whispered at night like rituals. And then it spoke. The house. The entity within it. I didn't hear it with ears. I felt it in my bones. You will carry me. And that's when I understood the final purpose. Not death. Dispersal. The house had grown as far as it could hear. It needed to be transplanted. And it would do that through me. I don't know how I got out. One night, I just woke up in a motel off Route 49, naked, covered in glue, my fingernails raw and torn. I ran. Didn't stop for days. But the house came with me. I brought it here. In my skin. In my blood. It sleeps in me now. Sometimes I hear things behind my motel walls. See seams in the wallpaper that weren't there before. At night, I smell glue. And something. Rotten. One morning, I woke up and found a patch of flesh growing behind the mirror. Pale. Veined. Warm. It pulsed when I touched it. And last night, I heard my name whispered from the electrical socket. I don't know how much longer I have. I'm writing this from a cheap laptop I found in the lobby. The motel manager knocked on my door 20 minutes ago and asked why the carpet outside my room was leaking. It started again. It's growing. If you're reading this, if this finds its way online somehow, it means the house used me to reach you. It's already in your walls now. Don't peel the wallpaper. Don't listen when it calls your name. Don't feed it your fear. Because once it knows you're afraid, it's already inside.